And Lettleman, it's back. We done dang did it again. A whole new miniseries. Battle Royale is back on the menu, boys. So do old dad a favor and hit that little subscribe button and drop a comment for the algorithm gods. You have earned it, king. So, mailbox red dot season is amongst us. We have gathered a posse, a gaggle, a flock of the best close emitter red dots on the market, and we're putting them head to head. We're going to test durability of the optic, its glass, reliability, and how they handle the stress of those long, hard nights of LARPing in my mother's basement. All right, so now I know it's just the boys. Quick note I want to make to you guys. This channel is 100% self-funded. No mega contracts I've sold my soul for, in exchange for checks getting dropped in my bank account to tell you guys what's good and how you're missing out if you don't consume the latest and greatest. It's not going to happen here. I'm just a guy with an unhealthy gun obsession and a 401k that's lacking in attention. Stonks, baby. I do this for fun, guys. I shoot 5 days a week or so at my farm, and one of those days I play dress up, bring a camera, and LARP for you boys. So if you think that's cool, hell yeah. If that ain't your thing, hell yeah. Do you, my dudes. 2024 is going to be the year of the people, and I am here to serve the kings of the community. So let's begin. We've gathered the Trijicon RCR, aimpoint acro P2, the Steiner MPS, Holosun 509T, lead and steel Pandora's Box 3, and the Cyclee Bear. Whew. I ain't seen so much glass since Walter and Jesse ran the Winnebago out into the desert. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to roll out each optic in its own video. We'll talk about the features of each optic, get your eyes behind the glass, and let you make your own opinions about each piece. Once each optic has been showcased, what we're going to do then is we're going to put them all head to head and declare one winner. We are going to get to the bottom of closed emitter red dots and decide which dot is going to perform the best. Which has the best balance of ruggedness and glass? Which dot is going to be the absolute best bang for your buck and help you make the most educated purchase possible? So, at the risk of my own financial security, friend, let's dive in. What is a closed emitter red dot? Well, while the concept is, rather new to pistols, the actual closed emitter red dot sight is not. In fact, it's actually a rather combat-proven design. Aimpoint is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of red dot sights. Not just, the P2, but all the way back into the 80s and 90s, Gothic, Serpent, Black Hawk Down. Those were aim points on those guns. A laser-like emitter, it projects this dot onto the glass and you see it. And when you see it, it gets on target and then you pull the trigger. It's really just that simple. Now, obviously, there's a little bit more in depth than that going on, but that's the shortest and quickest cliff notes I could possibly get you. So, essentially, there's two types of pistol dots, open and closed. And guys, the name, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. The emitter, the dot that you actually see, is either enclosed in a glass case of emotion or open. Now, we're not here to decide which is more gooder because, that's coming and that's in the works for now. But we do need to decide which dot trapped in that glass case of emotion is most goodest. So boys, yeah, the whole idea with the closed emitter is that you're not going to have any of the issues associated with the elements like mud, rain, sand, dirt, belly button lint, and little Debbie crumbs. Getting down into the emitter, blocking your sight picture, blocking your field of view. The emitter is encapsulated and the housing keeps that stuff out. So when you actually go to draw and use your piece, you see your target in a nice crisp dot and not just a chunk of cosmic brownie. Rad, right? So what we have here today is the all-new Trijicon RCR. This really just started getting out in really any sort of volume. And to be honest with you, it really hasn't even began to satisfy the demand yet. They're still pretty far behind. And when they do get in stock, they're sold out in 30 minutes when websites actually show them available. However, I'm sure things will pick up soon, but we've been saying that the past 3 years about everything. So I don't know. Here it is. So first things first, my initial impression. Well, we have a house moving box with some polished edges here, maybe more like the TV in Gam Gam's basement, they bought back in 1969 brand new. It's a rather odd shape, definitely unlike all of the rest. It's more of a cube than the typical mailbox looking dot. But looks aren't terribly important to me, JK. Looking cool is literally half the battle, guys. Who am I kidding? But as long as it doesn't look like some ridiculous space laser ray gun attachment, I'm gonna give it a shot. So, First cool thing about this guy is that it still utilizes the OG original RMR footprint. This here is a big win in my opinion. The RMR footprint is probably one of the most used footprints out there because, well, the RMR is probably one of the most used dots in the past decade, even further back. So it's been around a while, and if you have as well, you've probably already owned one, or at least owned a pistol that came with an RMR plate out of the box. Now, what's really interesting is how this guy mounts. Your traditional RMR dots either mount direct to the pistol, if it's milled so, or a plate that goes onto the pistol and then the optic goes onto the plate, then held down with 2 set screws. A couple dabs of Loctite or Vibratite, and you're good. But being a closed emitter, there was essentially nowhere to run the screws through. So Trijicon pulled a big brain move and patented some capstan screws, I think I said that right, let me know in the comments if I messed that up, that slide into the sides of the base of the optic here. Now here's where it gets pretty interesting. You kind of have to finesse these guys into place, unlike before where you just plop the optic down, gave the screws a couple ugga-duggas until you either cross-threaded them or stripped them and then made a permanent modification to your gat. The RCR is just a little different. So you kind of just put both screws into the base and gently place the dot onto the plate. Now, you have to grab a small metal rod, like an Allen key. Make sure the screws are lined up nice and tight and slide the key in through that hole. Kind of just finagle them into the threads, and now try and keep both set screws at the same pace as you torque them down to avoid, any stretching or bending of the threads or screws. Now be certain to get a dab of Vibratite onto the screws before you secure them into place, because taking this thing on and off is kind of a pain. The overall mounting process, simply put, it's a gigantic pain in the ass. Now, first world problems here, but obviously, it's just not super user-friendly like all of the other optics. Obviously, it's not a huge deal, guys, really, but it's definitely the biggest pain to install out of any pistol dot I've ever used. But it does utilize the RMR footprint. So to me, it's kind of a worthy trade-off because I have so many RMR optics and so many RMR plates. And now with a top load battery, you shouldn't ever have to take it off again unless, you blow it up, destroy it, or, just go a different direction with optics. So really not a huge deal, honestly. Once and done, at least for me. My real and legit only beef with the mounting system is Trijicon provides you with an Allen key for the job to get those screws torqued down. It's legit an Allen key. It's got the threads on it and everything like that for the legacy pieces, the old set screws. It legitimately has, zero use for the RCR other than being, a pry bar for the set screws to torque them down. But if you've ever used any manufacturer supplied tool, you'll know, well, they're really not the best quality. I bent mine literally on the first screw, making sure it's torqued down properly. Because it's literally a pry bar is how you use it to torque down the screws, you don't ever actually know how many inch-pounds you're at. You kind of just bend your Allen key and slap that baby and say, yeah, that ain't going nowhere. This is why it's super important to use a thread locker like Vibratite. Now, again, if you're like me, it's probably not going to play musical gats very often. If not, maybe never. Hopefully so. So the amount of bent Allen keys I'll amass will be small. But if you're the kind of guy, that's where your dot bounces back and forth between different setups, quite often, you won't appreciate this mounting system too much. In fact, you'll probably wish, it had its own plate with a set screw and a clamp like, every other closed emitter on the market. And one slightly annoying part, the slots that are on the screws, they're very small in diameter. They have to be, so you don't tear the metal when you go and push in your pry bar and screw and just rip it all up, which is a good thing, because here's the deal. The tool is going to be cheap and it's going to be disposable. Unlike your set screws, because, if you get a torn one of these things or one of them that's just all boogered up, it could leave you downstream without a paddle. So since they're small and you can't get a bigger diameter, more solid push pin or a metal tool in there, so stock up on the small and thin ones, durable ones if you can find it, because, the one they provide you with is a good for about, one use. Again, guys, sacrifices have to be made to continue to utilize that same footprint, and decisions have to be made. And overall, without designing a whole new plate, I think, legit, Trijicon did the absolute best and most intuitive system possible while utilizing the older footprint. Yeah, do the screws have small little holes in it? Sure, but you know what? It makes the screws more durable so you're not torquing those things out and ripping them and then getting them stuck in there with no way to get them out. It's not a huge deal. So let's talk about the glass. It's fair sized, it definitely sports a larger field of view than most of the closed emitters on the market. However, it does leave a touch to be desired. To put it simply, it kind of feels like the original Legacy RMR, but the dot is trapped inside, the glass case of emotion. But it's just a tiny touch smaller glass than the original RMR. When side by side, you can absolutely tell, it's not as wide and it's just slightly not as tall of glass. The huge housing, just kind of impedes on that. And you're kind of left with two options, make your optic larger on, already large optic to put onto your handgun. Nah, I think it's satisfactory. And it's definitely larger than some in the Battle Royale. Now, as far as the glass goes, there is a touch of color and sight disruption. Looking through the RCR, you can find it most noticeable. And it's far more noticeable on the original RMR and the RMR HD, which already had kind of a blue tint to it, but it is considerably more noticeable on the RCR, and especially then, the RMR HD, the new one that just came out. It's not a huge deal, because it does keep, the sun from blocking out your image, turning it into a death ray into your eyeball. But, there is some give and take with this. And second, one thing I want to touch on here is there's this kind of distortion to your sight picture. Like, the object you're seeing through the glass isn't like magnified. It's kind of hard to describe, but like, it feels like you're looking at like a two-dimensional and flat kind of sight picture through there. When you move the optic around, the objects you're seeing just feel kind of not natural moving. Now for pistol dots, this really isn't anything new. They're almost all like that, regardless of price, regardless of brand. You gotta make these things durable, and angled, slightly convex glass is the best way to mitigate and dissipate impact, damage, and just overall making them more durable. But with that comes a little bit of sacrifice to the perfect sight picture. Overall, it's really not that awful, guys, but it is noticeable and it does need said. Now, overall construction seems, well, very nice. Trijicon dots have always felt extremely rugged and well thought out, and the housing of the RCR is no different than that. The coating that it has on it feels solid. It feels like a finish, that's going to be very durable. All the corners on the housing have been polished off either just slightly or tremendously. Again, this helps mitigate the damage, from impact and things like that, just things that go bump into the night. Now, new to the Trijicon RCR is the top-loading battery. No more dismounting the optic, fretting over strip screws, losing zero, whatever. Simply unscrew the top cap and you're good to go. But Trijicon advertises 6 entire years of continuous battery life on brightness setting number 5, which is actually pretty useful and isn't terribly dark, You would think 6 years of battery life, it'd have to be on basically pitch black and you can't even see the dot. Nah, it's pretty solid. So that's pretty wild, right? Over a half decade of battery life? Not too bad. Now let's talk about the price. Guys, these boogers legit have a retail of $849. Like, good Lord, are they proud of these things? Pretty sure that's the most expensive pistol dot on the market. Now, street price on these things is right around $710 to $750, depending on who you get it from, which is better, but it still ain't great. It's definitely the most expensive out of all the entire lineup, and the most expensive, I think, on the market. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Now, overall, we're going to be a little critical of these dots. And we were pretty critical here of the RCR, but that's what I'm here for. And that's what this series is all about. We're going to nitpick these things. We're going to find out exactly what they do well and exactly, what they don't do well. Small things add up to big things. And when you have a big boy asking price tag, you gotta back it up. Now guys, in reality, we have a fantastic optic here, built by a company that is world renowned for making absolute tanks of optics. You ever heard of the ACOG? Yeah. But the question is the product worth the coin? Do we have the best closed emitter on the market right here? Well, you'll have to subscribe and tune in for the next one. We have the RCR, Aimpoint P2, Lead and Steel PB3, Holosun, 509, Steiner MPS, and the Cyclee Bear. All going head to head, and there will be only one left standing. The best closed emitter pistol dot on the market, boys. So until then, subscribe and make sure you flex skills, not dollar bills.